You know that moment when you realize everything you've built was a lie? That was me, standing in the middle of a crowded graduation hall, the music playing, laughter echoing, people clapping, and the man I loved, the man I funded, fed, and believed in, looked me dead in the eyes and said to the security guard, "She's not part of my family. Please escort her out." That was the last sentence he ever said to me. But maybe I should start from the beginning. Or maybe not the beginning, because beginnings are too innocent for the kind of story this turned into. Every Friday night at exactly 6 p.m., I'd walk out of St. Clair Medical Center. To my coworkers, I was Mia Langston, the quiet billing clerk, the one who reused glass lunch containers and rotated the same 3 outfits all year. They never knew that 10 minutes after clocking out, I was someone else entirely. In the underground parking lot of the Warwick Hotel, I'd trade my faded office clothes for silk, my scuffed-up Toyota for a leased Range Rover, and my ordinary life for the one that still had my real name written on the gate, Langston Estate. Because Mia Langston, the average girl from the 3rd floor, was also the daughter of Von Langston, the man who practically owned half of Houston's skyline. I used to think love was something you had to test. That's why I hid everything. The money, the privilege, the mansion, the last name that opened doors. I wanted him, Tyler Morgan, to love me. Not the black card. Not the 7-figure trust fund. Just Mia. He was a med student. Bright. Charming. The kind of man who smiled like he'd been chosen by the universe. We met at a community health outreach. I dropped a stack of folders. He caught them before they hit the floor. Cliché, I know. But in that moment, I thought fate had good timing. In 3 months, I was driving him to class every morning. In 6, I was paying part of his tuition. By the end of the first year, I was covering everything. Rent, groceries, bills. Over 5 years, I sent over $51,000 into his account, money he always promised to pay back one day. He never did, but I didn't care then. Because I was in love. Or what I thought was love. My father found out. Of course he did. He finds out everything. He once looked at me across his mahogany desk, wine glass in hand, and said, "Sweetheart, how long do you plan to keep living this double life?" And I told him, "Until I know he loves me for me, not my bank account." He sighed, poured me a glass of Bordeaux. He only opened for board meetings. Real love doesn't need to hide, Mia. If he's the right one, you wouldn't have to pretend for 5 years. But I didn't listen, because daughters in love rarely do. There was a ring, a tiny blue box. He proposed in a Mexican diner, with candles stolen from the cashier's counter. I remember thinking, this is what love looks like when it's pure. But the same week he bought that ring, he spent $1,900 on a Tag Heuer watch. He told me it was a knockoff from eBay. I didn't know the truth then. I do now. The graduation party was supposed to be our victory. Our celebration, after everything we'd built together. Except, I was the only one who'd been building. I paid for the catering, the decor, the venue, everything. He invited everyone except me. When I showed up, dressed in the same silk he once called his favorite, he looked startled. Like I was an uninvited guest at a stranger's event. And when I tried to walk toward him, smiling, proud, he turned away. Then he said it. That line. The one that sliced through me cleaner than any knife could. "She's not part of my family. Please escort her out." The guards didn't even hesitate. I didn't cry that night. I just drove, not to the lake house, not to the Range Rover, but back to the hospital parking lot where my shift usually ended. I sat there in the dark, watching my reflection in the windshield. The woman who'd given up her name, her money, her pride for a man who couldn't even give her respect. The next morning, I woke up at 5:15. Not because I had work, but because my body had been trained to wake up early, to walk the 30 minutes Tyler always insisted on for our health. Except this time, I walked alone. And somewhere between the first and second mile, I realized maybe my father was right. Maybe real love doesn't need to be tested. Maybe it just needs to be seen in the quiet moments, without pretending, without hiding. Sometimes I replay that night in my head, The candle burned halfway down, the pasta going cold, and my phone lighting up over and over. Each vibration a reminder that love was slipping through my fingers. Tyler was late again. He said study group. But I knew better. Because I'd already seen the truth blinking on my screen. The GPS that parked outside a luxury apartment in River Oaks. Same location. 2 nights in a row. I sat there, in that tiny one-bedroom apartment with peeling walls, thinking about all the versions of me I'd built, and how none of them were enough to make him stay. Flashback. Every morning, I woke up at 5:15. Not because I was a morning person, but because Tyler liked early walks before class. He said it helped him think like a doctor. We'd walk side by side. Him talking about the future, Italy, new cars, a beach wedding, me silently calculating what I could sell next month to afford it all. At breakfast, I'd hand him a pre-written check, $5,200 per term, slipped between the pages of his anatomy book. He'd kiss my forehead and say, "Mia, you're the most frugal woman I know. With you by my side, I can get through anything." And I'd smile, pretending his words didn't sting. Because I wasn't frugal. I was hiding wealth so he'd love me without it. He never noticed that the cheap lunch bag I carried every day used to be on the cover of a fashion magazine, its logo carefully removed. By day, I was Mia from St. Clair Medical Center. Insurance clerk, modest salary, worn shoes. The woman who brought lunch from home. By night, I was Miss Langston. Every Friday, I'd change clothes in the hospital restroom, apply pink lipstick, and order an Uber to the Warwick basement, where a Range Rover waited beside a garment bag and heels that could pay a month's rent. From there, I'd drive to my father's gated estate, Springwood Lakeside, where the staff greeted me with martinis and investment folders already tabbed for my review. And I'd sit on the balcony, watching the lights shimmer over the lake, wondering what Tyler would do if he walked in at that very moment. Would he still hold me? Would he still say, "I love you"? Or would he be blinded by the marble floors and 10-seat dining table? I wanted to believe love could survive the truth. I really did. There was a penthouse, a quiet secret I bought months before his graduation, overlooking Discovery Green Park. I kept the keys hidden in my desk drawer at work. Sometimes I'd take them out during lunch, trace the cool metal, and imagine the day I'd surprise him with it. He once teased, "You've never taken me to your place since we got engaged." I laughed and said, after graduation, "It'll be a surprise." I wasn't lying. I was just hiding the truth. Love doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes quietly, like water seeping into stone. It started with his old fossil watch suddenly replaced by a new Longines. He said it was an end-of-year sale. His Thursday study nights became later and later. His books untouched. His phone always face down. I told myself it was stress, that I was imagining things. But something in me, the part that had survived boardrooms and betrayals, knew. So I slipped a GPS tracker into his car key. And just like that, the illusion cracked. 2 nights in a row, he parked at the same luxury complex in River Oaks. I sat on my worn sofa, watching the tracker dot flicker on the map, and feeling my chest tighten with every passing minute. I didn't need to see her face. I didn't need a name. Because betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It eats through you quietly, like rust. That night, the apartment felt colder than usual. The ceiling fan rattled. The candle burned low. And the dinner I made for him, fettuccine, his favorite, went untouched. He came home past midnight. His cologne smelled different, sharper, newer. He smiled, tired but content, and said, "You stayed up for me?" I stared at him, and for the first time, I didn't answer. It's strange how you can live with someone, feed them, clothe them, fund their dreams, and still feel invisible. Each month, I watched $5,200 disappear, exchanged for promises, for illusions, for the privilege of believing I was loved. And when I looked at the engagement ring, the one he'd given me with a trembling hand in a cheap diner, I didn't see romance anymore. I saw a transaction. People think betrayal happens in one explosive moment. But no, it begins quietly, with every time you doubt yourself instead of doubting them. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened my laptop. Every transfer, every bill, every lie. I documented everything, because I knew when the truth finally came out, it wouldn't just be his graduation party that ended. It would be his entire future. And maybe, just maybe, mine could finally begin. 9:47 p.m. The phone buzzed on the counter. Studying cardio phys with the group. Heading back soon. I stared at the message like it was proof of loyalty. Or maybe proof of how blind I'd become. When the door opened at 10:56, he looked tired, but not in the way medical students look tired. This was a different kind of fatigue, the kind that comes from living two lives. His shirt smelled expensive, subtle, foreign. Not my perfume, not my detergent. Sorry, the lab had his shoes, he murmured, leaning down to kiss my hair. You're still up. Your favorite dish is waiting, I said softly, to the air between us. He smiled, skipped dinner, and went straight to the shower. I just sat there, pasta going cold, silence, so loud it made my pulse hurt. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I opened my phone, the album I kept of us. Spring Festival, him laughing, sunlight across his face. And then, the watch.
Zoom in.
Longines Master Collection. Retail, $1,975. The same wrist he swore only wore knockoffs. My chest tightened. Not because of the price, but the lie. The kind of lie that doesn't even blink when it looks you in the eye. A week later, I found the first receipt. Stuffed carelessly in his jacket pocket. Azure Seafood Restaurant. Dinner for two. $184.
Rare wine.
Thursday night, his study group night. I didn't cry.
Didn't scream.
I folded the receipt, placed it inside my old diary, and kept smiling. Because that's what women like me do when the truth starts leaking. We collect the pieces quietly. It was late. I was brushing my hair in the bathroom when I heard him. A low voice through the crack of the door. Yeah, Saturday works. Same spot. Just don't text anything weird. She's getting suspicious. He laughed.
She.
I stepped out, pretending casual. Who was that? The dean, he said, steady. He invited me fishing. No blink. No flinch. Only smooth deceit. Nice, I said. You should go. But the next morning, I powered on his old phone. The one he'd said was wiped clean. It wasn't. There it was. A thread of messages under one name. I still haven't forgotten that night at the Riverstone apartment.
Bring the ring next time.
I love how it feels. My blood went cold. Riverstone, the same luxury complex his car had parked at 2 nights in a row. The same building he once said was too expensive even to dream of. And the ring? He never wore any ring except the one I gave him. So, whose was it? Or worse, who was he giving it to? The next week, another clue. A tiny paper folded behind his study book. Livia and Company.
Jewelry.
White gold earrings. $1,250. Same date as the night he came home late, muttering about a traffic jam on 610. Except that night, there'd been no rain. No accident. Google Maps said 18 minutes flat. I took an Uber that route myself just to be sure. 18 minutes. Exactly. That's when I stopped defending him and started watching him. His sweet words became rehearsed. His affection timed. His eyes empty. Every babe, every I missed you, sounded like dialogue from a script he'd practiced in someone else's bed. The watch. The ring. The dinners. The earrings. They weren't gifts. They were proof of how small I'd made myself just to feel chosen. The night of the med school gala. The air was heavy with perfume, ambition, and fake smiles. I was late. Work ran over. As I stepped into the ballroom, I spotted him across the room, laughing, shining under the chandeliers. The man I had built from the ground up. One of his classmates called out, "Yo, Tyler, who'd you bring tonight?" Still with the frugal roommate. He laughed. Loudly.
Yeah.
Long-term roommate. Easier to call it that. The table roared. And I froze. 5 years of love. Reduced to a joke. When he finally turned, our eyes met. Just for a second. Enough to know he hadn't just betrayed me. He had erased me. Mia, he said too quickly. I was just telling them how you pack my breakfast every morning. I smiled, the kind of smile you give before a storm. That's nice, I whispered. I'll grab a drink. Then I walked away.
Calm.
Controlled. But inside, I was already plotting the end. That night, when I came home alone, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. I looked at the engagement ring on my finger, the same one he once called our symbol of sacrifice. Now, it just looked like evidence. Evidence of my silence, my trust, my denial. While he slept, I gathered everything. The receipts, the photos, the texts, the transfer records, and saved them in a folder titled, For When He Forgets Who Built Him. Because one day, when the truth comes crashing down, it won't just be a heartbreak. It'll be a reckoning. People always ask how women like me don't see the red flags. We do. We just keep hoping they'll turn green again. But not anymore. That night, as I lay awake beside the man I no longer recognized, I realized the test was never about whether he loved me. It was about whether I loved myself enough to stop pretending. You ever look at someone you love and suddenly realize they've been studying you the whole time? Not your face, not your smile, but your usefulness. That was the night I stopped being Tyler's fiancé and started being his failed project. The night it all cracked, he came home late again. The scent on his collar wasn't mine. Expensive, subtle, female, like the kind of perfume that doesn't scream. It whispers belonging. He smiled, said something about lab issues. Kissed my hair like routine. I smiled back, but I'd already stopped listening. Because when lies start repeating, they begin to sound like music you've already learned the steps to. But I didn't scream, didn't accuse, didn't cry, just watched. That's how predators survive. You stop reacting. You start recording. A week later, I found the first receipt. Azure Seafood Restaurant. Dinner for two. $184. Thursday night, his supposed study night. Nothing about it hurt yet. What hurt came later, when I realized how ordinary it all was. How practiced. Then came the text I wasn't supposed to see. Bring the ring next time. I love how it feels. Riverstone. Same place. Riverstone. The luxury apartment complex, he said, was too expensive. The one only rich residents could afford. Turns out he was a regular guest. Still, I didn't explode. I investigated. I tracked his silences, his habits, the way his phone never left his hand, but his eyes never left mine long enough to notice I was changing too. Then came the student gala. He laughed when his friends called me his frugal roommate. I stood there in my neatly pressed dress, holding a smile so tight it could have cracked glass. He introduced me like a footnote. Oh, she packs my breakfast every morning. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. Because in that moment I realized I'd been domesticated into invisibility. After that night, I didn't sleep. I planned. No rage. No crying. Just cold clarity. I reached out to someone from his past. Lindsay Walker. The jealous ex, he said, ruined his peace. She met me in a quiet cafe. White blouse. Bun tight enough to hide years of bitterness. And when I said his name, she didn't even blink. He told you the same story, didn't he? That I was crazy. That I didn't trust him. Then she opened her phone, slid it across the table. A spreadsheet.
Names. Dates. Amounts.
Each row labeled with precision like medical notes. Emily.
Nora.
Lindsay.
Mia.
Column after column. Duration. Investment. Outcome. It wasn't love, it was research. I didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Didn't feel my pulse until Lindsay whispered. He tracks women. Financially. Emotionally. You're just another entry. And then, Something inside me cracked open. Not from pain. From clarity. That night, when he fell asleep beside me, I quietly reached for the spare key under his vitamin jar, opened his locked cabinet. Inside, one notebook. Black leather.
Thin. Precise.
I opened it. Page 1. Emily. Dental assistant. $18,400. 9 months. Terminated. Page 2. Lindsay. A clinic coordinator. $25,200. Stable. Terminated early. Page 3.
Mia.
That's me. $52,100. High support potential. No close family ties. Viewed as potential residency sponsor. Maintain through graduation. My hands shook, not from shock, but from the weight of proof. Then the last page. Page 5.
Bree.
Daughter of a board physician. Unstable personal income but strong family influence. Owns condo at Riverstone. Currently testing intimacy progress. Evaluation. Viable replacement for Mia if residency path succeeds. I closed it. Sat in silence. The world didn't spin, didn't collapse. It just paused. Because in that moment, I realized something worse than betrayal. He didn't love me. He audited me. And when a better deal came along, he started liquidating. People think heartbreak is loud. It isn't. It's the quiet click of a cabinet drawer closing. The whisper of a zipper as you pack your last piece of faith. It's the realization that while you were building a future, someone else was drafting your exit strategy. And that's where I left it.
For now.
Because sometimes revenge isn't confrontation. It's documentation. And when the right moment comes, I'll let his own handwriting tell the world who he really is. He taught me something priceless. Never confuse love with investment. Because one gives without measure. The other always expects interest. Some endings don't come with thunder. They come with chandeliers. And champagne. And a smile sharp enough to slice through lies. That night, the night of his graduation, wasn't his celebration. It was my closure. He thought he was walking into his triumph. Dr. Tyler Morgan, the rising star. The golden boy with charms so polished, it reflected everyone but himself. But behind the applause, behind the glittering lights, I was watching. I had built this stage for him, piece by piece, not to honor him, but to expose him. The crack had already begun weeks earlier. The morning after I found that notebook, his ledger of women, I sent a single text to Lindsay. We're not victims. We're evidence. And in that moment, the story stopped being about heartbreak. It became about accountability. I opened my laptop, created a spreadsheet.
Name. Date.
Amount. Motive. Every woman. Every lie. Every transaction dressed as love. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was documentation that could ruin him quietly, in his own language. Data. Then came Clarissa, another name in his chain of manipulation. She was sharper, colder. She replied to my message with just 3 words. It's time. That was all I needed. Tyler's graduation invitation arrived a week later. Gold foil. Elegant serif font. Dr. Tyler Morgan. Hyatt Regency Grand Ballroom. A perfect celebration for a man built on borrowed foundations. What he didn't know was that I now owned every company that had a hand in that celebration. The event planner, the caterer, the lighting and sound company, Lux Sonic, which I acquired quietly through Langston Holdings just a month before. He thought the evening was about him. It was about evidence. And endings. I dressed slowly that evening. Black satin. Square neckline. Low back. Elegant. Quietly final. The engagement ring, his so-called half-year savings gift, still shone on my finger. It would shine one last time, right before I buried his illusion. When I walked into the ballroom, every head turned. The air shifted. Music paused for half a breath. Tyler froze mid-laugh. His smile, bright, public, rehearsed, cracked like glass catching light. Margaret, his mother, sat near the stage. Blue gown.
Pearls. Disdain.
Her stare sliced through me like I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't. Not in his story, anyway. But I was about to rewrite it. There was no seat with my name. No trace of me on the guest list. The event staff looked confused. I smiled. I'm the one who signed the ballroom rental agreement. His face went pale. I could see it. That flicker of panic he tried to swallow behind his practiced grin. He had no idea this wasn't his night. It was my audit. I approached his circle of friends. The laughter around him stilled, turned awkward, brittle. A brunette in red leaned toward Margaret and whispered something. Margaret turned, voice dripping disdain. Oh, Mia, right? I thought you had a night shift. I smiled.
Calm.
Controlled. I was supposed to. But for a night this significant, I figured I should attend the closing act. Her expression faltered, confusion replacing arrogance. Tyler stepped in, jaw tight. You made it. I was going to call after the ceremony. To do what? I asked quietly. Thank me for being left off the guest list? The silence that followed was heavy. You could hear the champagne fizz in glasses. Margaret's eyes hardened. You're disrupting someone else's event. Shall I call security? I looked at her, then at Tyler, and finally, at the woman in red. Her hand rested on his arm like it already belonged there. Maybe it did. Fine, I said. But before I go, I have a little gift. I walked up to the main table, picked up Tyler's champagne glass. The same one he had toasted his future with. My reflection stared back from the bubbles, calm, detached, unrecognizable. I raised the glass, but my voice didn't shake. It rang clear, like the final page of a story that refused to fade quietly. To Dr. Tyler Morgan, I began. A man who taught me that love, in the wrong hands, can become a transaction. Who proved that sometimes the people we build up are only learning how to use the ladder we gave them. The room fell silent. Even the music stopped pretending. Here's to the women who funded your dreams, I continued. And the ones still waiting for refunds. Gasps. Eyes wide. Tyler's mother froze mid-breath. The woman in red shifted uncomfortably. Then I reached into my clutch, pulled out a small flash drive, placed it on the table beside him. Your receipts, your words, your women, every file, every message, every transaction. I smiled softly. You can keep the notebook. I made copies. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, a statue built from panic. I set the champagne glass down, walked out of the ballroom, didn't look back, because sometimes the loudest revenge is leaving someone exactly where they thought they won. He called it love. I called it investment. But in the end, only one of us knew how to collect interest. There's a sound you never forget. Not a scream, not even a slap, just a diamond, hitting the bottom of a champagne glass. A single ting that echoed louder than 5 years of pretending. That's how it ended. Not with tears, but with clarity. Congratulations, Dr. Tyler Morgan. May you find plenty of new investors. Let's hope they don't ask for refunds. I didn't wait to see his face. Didn't need to. The performance was over. The curtain fell. And for the first time in years, I walked out of a room that no longer owned me. Outside the ballroom, the night air was cold and sharp, like truth. Houston's skyline glowed ahead, indifferent to my pain, but I didn't feel small anymore. Every footstep toward my car sounded like a closing file, a finished chapter, a woman reclaiming her name. I didn't drive to the Midtown apartment, that cramped shell of my experiment. Instead, I drove to Langston Pearl Tower. Home. The real one. The doorman straightened immediately when I stepped out. His surprise was polite, but his words hit like quiet validation. Welcome back, Miss Langston. Been a while. I'll be staying more often now, I said. Have someone come clean in the morning. He nodded, respectfully. Not as an employee greeting an office clerk, but as a man acknowledging a name that still meant something in the city. The elevator hummed to the 41st floor. My floor. My reflection stared back from the mirrored walls. a stranger and a survivor at once. When the doors opened, the penthouse greeted me in warm amber light. 3,400 square feet of silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the skyline, twinkling like a million eyes watching my rebirth. I stood there, barefoot on polished marble, and whispered to no one. You wanted to see who I really am, Tyler. Here she is. Later that night, I called my father. It's me. A pause. The kind that only fathers who already know the truth give. Are you ready to be a Langston again? More ready than ever. And I was. This time, I wasn't running from the Langston name. I was going to use it. 3 days later. St. Clair Medical Center. Not the same Mia who used to reheat lunch in the nurse's lounge microwave.
No.
This Mia walked in wearing a slate gray Maxra suit. Hair pulled tight. A quiet storm disguised as composure. Every head turned. The same people who once barely noticed me now couldn't look away. I didn't take the elevator to the 3rd floor. I took it to the top, the executive boardroom. Dr. Ronald Kessler, director of the residency program, stood as I entered. Miss Langston, he said, scanning my file. We met at the Houston Medical Foundation Gala, didn't we? We did. I replied evenly. And today, I'm here to discuss one of your residency candidates, Tyler Morgan. He frowned just slightly. I set a folder on his desk. Inside, 5 years of documentation, wire transfers, screenshots, receipts, the notebook. I'm not here for revenge, I told him. I'm here to protect the hospital's name. This man doesn't just manipulate women, he plans it, tracks it, treats it like a science. That's not empathy. That's pathology. He flipped through the evidence. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. 3 days later, Tyler Morgan was quietly removed from the residency list. No press release. No explanation. Just a name erased. I heard through a colleague that he found out during lunch, in the middle of the cafeteria, between a coffee and a half-eaten sandwich. His face went white. He called the admin office 5 times that day. No one answered. For the first time in years, he had no script, no plan, no fallback investor. I didn't smile when I heard it. I just exhaled, like finally closing the window in a storm. But the quiet wasn't enough. He had used women like they were grants, applications for comfort and control. So I did what I knew best. I built a network. Lindsay, Clarissa,
Zoe.
Names that once existed as victims. Now they were allies. I reached out to Tessa Chapman, a lawyer who specialized in financial coercion. Her eyes sharpened as I slid the folder across the table. We're not suing for money, I told her. We're suing for acknowledgement. For restoration. She nodded slowly. This case is methodical.
Rare.
And it's airtight. You handle the leverage. I'll handle the law. And leverage was my language. I started with Margaret Morgan, Tyler's mother. The woman with the pearl necklace and the glacier in her eyes. She managed a brokerage at the Haven Group, a small but powerful network that handled luxury properties for out-of-state elites. What she didn't know was that Langston Development owned the land under 3 of their most profitable subdivisions. I didn't need revenge. I needed pressure. One call to our legal division. One clause reactivated from an old dormant contract. And Haven Group's land deal renewal went under review. By the time Margaret realized what was happening, the buyers started calling me instead. Langston was the soil under her empire, and I had just pulled the ground out from under her heels. Some say revenge is about rage. It's not. It's about control. The calmest kind. The kind that makes the guilty live long enough to feel the loss of every illusion they built. I didn't ruin Tyler Morgan. He ruined himself. I just turned on the lights so he could see the wreckage. The last message I ever sent him was simple. Love without integrity is just a business deal. I've closed mine. And then I blocked his number. They say love tests you. Maybe. But sometimes, it's not love that's being tested. It's who you become when love betrays you. And that night, As the city blinked beneath my window, I stopped being the woman who gave everything for love and became the woman who took everything back. Sometimes, silence ruins a man faster than scandal ever could. All it took was an email, a single, clinical paragraph, and a 5-minute call from Langston's legal division. 5 weeks later, Margaret Morgan, once the polished broker queen of Lakeside, lost access to every Langston property under her name. No public drama. No raised voices. Just closed doors. Her California investor, the one she flaunted like a prize ribbon, suddenly withdrew. Change of heart, he said. No reason given. But she knew. And I knew. That's when the messages began. We need to talk. This is going too far. You'll regret this if you keep pushing. Tyler's words came through my phone like echoes from a collapsing house. Once, I would have trembled. Now, I just forwarded every message to my lawyer, Tessa. Each text was another brick in the wall of his own making. People think revenge is about retaliation. It's not. It's about restoration. About evening the scale until the world makes sense again. He once treated me as an investment, a merger of emotions and profit margins. So I made sure his dividends dried up, his portfolio collapsed, and every return he expected expired. 3 months after the party, his name vanished from the St. Clair residency portal. Just one clinical sentence under status. No longer eligible. Failed to meet ethical standards. It was the kind of bureaucratic death that leaves no fingerprints. I didn't need to see his face to imagine it. The disbelief, the scramble, the slow realization that no one was coming to save him this time. He tried applying to Greenwood Memorial, a forgotten hospital an hour outside Houston. No board certification. No prestige. A place where second chances go to die quietly. But he had nothing left to start over with. Meanwhile, Lindsay, Clarissa, and Zoe, his rotational investments, as he'd called them, each received quiet settlements. No tabloids. No gossip. Just whispers. His spreadsheet, began surfacing on private medical forums. No one knew who leaked it. But suddenly, Tyler Morgan became a cautionary tale whispered in corridors. Don't be like him. By late October, the night of the Houston Medical Foundation Gala arrived. The same stage where his arrogance was once applauded. This time, it was my name on the banner. Diamore sponsor. Langston Healthcare Initiative. I came alone. No escort. No pretense. My dress, a deep teal sheath, clean, blade sharp, whispering power in simplicity. Hair tied low. Jewelry minimal. Because my presence spoke louder than diamonds ever could. When I entered the ballroom, the chandeliers burned brighter than memory itself. The violinists played something delicate and cruelly beautiful. Faces turned, smiles widened. The kind reserved for those who had returned from ruin. Mia, congratulations. Chief Financial Officer. That's incredible. The Foundation's ethics program is brilliant work. Their voices blurred into background hums. Because across the room, by the buffet table, half-shadowed under the golden light, stood Tyler Morgan. His suit was cheap, his posture nervous, his eyes empty. The man who once calculated my worth down to the decimal now looked like a spreadsheet with no formulas left. Beside him, an older man in hospital scrubs, likely his supervisor. No one approached them. No introductions. Just isolation, the kind that hums louder than any crowd. Our eyes met. For a second, time fractured. Not anger, not pain, just completion. I smiled, not out of triumph,
but peace.
Then I turned away, because ghosts don't need closure. A few minutes later, someone tapped the mic and asked if I would give a few words. The hall quieted. My reflection shimmered in every champagne glass lifted toward me. I used to believe, I began slowly, that the best way to support greatness was to stand behind someone else. But I've learned that sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only way to change the system. Eyes fixed on me, but I turned slightly, Just enough for him to see himself reflected in my calm. Integrity, I said, isn't a word you inherit. It's a debt you pay every day. I raised my glass, and for the first time in years, I toasted, not to love, not to vengeance, but to self-respect. After the applause, a senior executive from the Texas Medical Board approached me. "Miss Langston," he said, "we'd be honored if you'd join our ethics review committee next year. We need people like you." I nodded, quietly, because that's how full circles work. Without fanfare, without fireworks, just quiet recognition from the universe that you made it back. On my way out, I saw Margaret Morgan sitting at a corner table. Her pearls looked heavier that night. Her eyes dimmed. She didn't speak, didn't even nod.
Because what could she say?
To the woman her son once called naive, now standing tall, untouchable, unstoppable, I walked past her unhurried, every step soft, deliberate, and for the first time, not as someone's wife or someone's mistake, but as Mia Langston. That night, I stood by my penthouse window again. The skyline glittered beneath me. The same lights that once witnessed my heartbreak now reflected my rebirth. I lifted my glass and whispered, not for him to hear, but for me to remember. The sweetest revenge isn't destruction. It's distance. Mia's story isn't about revenge. It's about remembering your worth in a world that profits from your doubt. When betrayed, she didn't scream. She recalibrated. And sometimes that's what survival really looks like. Because the most haunting thing you can ever say to the person who broke you is nothing at all. Just silence, success, and the sound of your heels walking away. What do you think of Mia's journey? Her calm precision, her grace under fire, her quiet revenge. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, follow for more tales of love, betrayal, and the women who rise from it. Not louder, but stronger.